A very good Monday morning to you, and welcome to the Fixed Wing Guy channel with me, Stuart Lomas. I hope I find you very well today. This video is a dual request. Oh yes indeed, even I get requests for videos. The first one is only a short one, but it's something I'll incorporate, not every time, but certainly now and again, to let this person feel appreciated and that I do take notice of him. Now, a gentleman called Rick Savage, yes Rick, said in a comment to one of my videos that generally he likes my videos, but sometimes there's a little aspect that he does dislike, in inverted commas. Now, we're all entitled to dislike certain things. Now, he doesn't particularly dislike me, and he doesn't particularly dislike the content, and he doesn't particularly dislike the way I put stuff over. So, you may ask, what is it he does actually dislike? Well, what he dislikes is when I sit here and talk about the Manchester weather, which I know is of vital importance to all of you. Yes, even Bob from Brisbane and Gold-Plated Pete and all the people are in completely different opposite ends of the earth. You all want to know what it's like here in Manchester. So what he said is, can we show out of the window? So, Mr. Savage, just for you, that's what I'm going to do. So, come hither. Come on. Hang on. Now then, here we go. Now, we don't do this very often, do we? No, we don't. Right, now, this is where I live. I now live in what actually is a very nice, the best landlord, apparently, in the country. And I have lovely, lovely walkways. Now, that path that you can see over there used to be a canal. Now, we've had our first mist of the autumn. Now, we tend to get quite a lot of mist here because I think down below, way below that path, is the water table. And we get quite a lot of mists which hang around. And we had our first mist yesterday. And they do say that autumn is the season of mists and mellow fruitfulness. And it does tend to be the case here. But as you can see, I'm surrounded by trees. I've got a nice walkway. And if I walk down to the right, I end up crossing a main road, across what was the old canal bridge, and I then wander off into a country park, which is beautiful. So that's where I live. Now, the weather forecast here today in Manchester. Do I need to say anything really? Well, no, not really. We have a little bit of grey cloud, but we also have blue sky. So we have a little bit of both today. And we have a little bit of wind, but it's not too bad. I was out and about early this morning because it's a very bad night last night. So I was up at silly o'clock this morning. So therefore I went out and did some shopping to occupy my mind and divert myself away from the pain. So there you go, Mr. Savage. That's just for you, sir. I will wander back now. Just bear with me. Righty-ho. Let's get started. Right, okay. Now, what actually am I going to talk about today? Well, this is the second request, which is from Mr. Mulberry Bush 1967 film fan. He mentioned in a comment a while ago now that obviously I'd mentioned that I used to be a professional fundraiser, and I still do a little bit for non-for-profit organisations where I don't charge. I would just give them the benefit of my 25 years involved in the charity world. Now, what Mr. Mulberry Bush 1967 film fan asked was what my opinion was of charity fundraisers. Now, obviously, I have an axe to grind here, and the axe to grind I have is probably this kind of size, but I'll try to remain detached. I'm not going to mention any charity names, and I'm not going to mention anybody in particular, so I'm probably on a very safe wicket here. I think what he was trying to get at is because we've had quite a lot of issues in the news, certainly here in Britain, regarding aggressive telephone fundraisers, shall we say, people who've got a job as fundraisers who were telemarketers, for instance, who were always targeted and driven and that kind of thing. Firstly, let me say, I do not agree with that strategy, because one of the things that hit the headlines here was I think it was an elderly gentleman who had some form of dementia. Now, obviously, I have an axe to grind with dementia as well, because my mum is suffering very badly from that right now. And apparently this organisation took him for thousands of pounds because he was struggling with his rational mind. So once they got his bank details, they could go back to him time and time and time again, taking money out of his bank account, and apparently they took tens of thousands of pounds. But it's not particularly that instance that I want to talk about. What I want to talk about, which I hope will answer the request, is where I, as an ex-professional fundraiser, is come from. Is what you've got to have being a fundraiser is obviously a belief in the charity for which you're working, that charity can do some form of good for their, for one better phrase, client base, that you are seen to be doing good work, and more importantly than anything else, that you are ethical and honest and open about everything you do. Let me start off for something that probably annoys us all, I would wager a little bit, which are the on-street charity fundraisers who shake cans. Yeah, we all know them. Now, the interesting thing that you might not know, now I'm not too sure how this stands legally in the US or Australia, and if you know, let me know. It is actually illegal and outside the remit of on-street charity fundraisers to either approach potential donors, actually one-to-one request a donation, or actually in effect shake the cans, making passers-by feel guilty. And it is illegal because if people want to give, they will give. They shouldn't have to feel pressurized, because in my view, and please let me know if you think I'm wrong, a forced donation is not quite as worthy. If you feel out of the goodness of your heart that you actually want to help whatever cause these people represent, then you will give and you will feel good about that. If you are made to feel guilty about that cause or not supporting that cause, then it takes something away from that act of giving. Secondly, are more on-street charity fundraisers, and these are the ones usually who are university students. They are all wearing t-shirts emblazoned with the charity's name, and they say, "Excuse me, sir, do you have a couple of minutes?" And then they engage you in conversation, whether it be about water shortage or starvation, or plagues that are running riot through third world countries, or whether it is for tsunami relief or whatever it is. And they engage you for conversation for an inordinate amount of time, where normally if you're in a town centre, you may well be on your lunch break, therefore you only have an hour. You may well be doing shopping, or you may well have screaming children with you who are demanding your attention, and you really haven't got time to put aside. Now in Britain, we call them chuggers. Now you may or may not have heard this term. A chugger is a charitable mugger, somebody who mugs you in the name of a charity, so a chugger. And I find those people actually quite distasteful. I have only been engaged in conversations a few times with these people, and it is amazing how little knowledge these people have when they come up against somebody who is actually a fundraiser by trade, with a maximum of 33 years both voluntary and paid fundraising experience. I'm also amazed that they generally cannot ask any sensible questions of you, other than to try to instill guilt into your soul, and that they don't have an in-depth knowledge base if you want to ask them about what exactly this money will be doing. It all goes towards the end goal, but you can't get to the end goal without intermediate steps, as we all know. So those are your charity muggers, or chuggers as we call them. Excuse me, just for a minute. Now the other problem, of course, is you have the people like myself who are employed by main or largish charities who can afford to pay a relatively good salary to somebody like myself to actually raise money on their behalf, whether it be from doing event planning, where they will do charity balls and things like that, or whether it is to sell legacies. And I use the word sell advisedly, which means that people go on the phone and ask people to, when they create their will, that they make provision in that will for that particular charity. So they're selling that idea as a forward planning measure on behalf of that person. Never could bring myself to do legacy fundraising. I find it distasteful. I find it quite hard to ask people to give money after they're dead. If you want to put a clause in your will that says an X amount of money is to go to the charity of the choosing of the executor or one of the beneficiaries, then that is perhaps a nicer way of doing it in my book. I personally was what was called a trusts and foundation fundraiser. Now my job, very simply, was to dig through multiple sources of potential funders who particularly liked what we did as a charity at that particular time. That can take a long time because you have a number of sources, of course. You have personal contacts, friends, family who work for companies who have a certain amount of their budget, their yearly budget, to give away to charities because they get tax relief on that money. You go canvassing around local companies within your area or within the area of the operation of the charity. And then, of course, you get to the real nose to the grindstone stuff where you have volumes of charitable foundations and trusts who were set up over the last 100 years who will support good causes. And then you have to filter through all of those to find the ones that are most suitable to you. And then once you've done that, you then put together either an application letter, or you fill in quite a comprehensive application form that trust or foundation send to you. And then, of course, you have to then supply copies of your audited accounts so that organisation can see that you are a bona fide and above board organisation doing exactly what they say they're doing, the kind of people we deal with, and the numbers of people we put through during any financial year, so that they can justify giving the money to people like the charities I work for. Now, if that is done correctly, I view that is probably, and I know I've got an axe to grind here, the most noble way of gaining money, because it is asking a lot of time and expertise from somebody like me in return for time and expertise from the assessors at the trust or foundation and their goodwill to give you the money. So it is a kind of reciprocal arrangement. I think the problem is with fundraising right now, as I see it as an ex-professional fundraiser, is that sense of morality, those ethics, kind of seem to be disappearing. And that's actually quite sad, and I kind of get the feeling that that was what was upsetting Mulberry Bush 1967 film fan, that he was perhaps finding it sticking in his craw slightly, that to get more and more money, more and more charities were willing to do whatever they considered necessary to get that money, no matter who suffered, for want of a better phrase, because of their high-handed and very aggressive taxes, like your man with dementia, for instance. Can it be put right? Well, of course it can be put right, because anything can be put right. What it needs is the will to put it right. I also feel that this is kind of a reflection of society. Everything is becoming more aggressive in society. I was a salesman for 25 years, driving up and down the country, selling anything and everything I've sold. And as time got longer in my selling career, the targets we had to hit were getting higher and higher and higher, and the hours that we would be expected to work were getting longer and longer and longer, of course, we had to work longer hours to ensure we hit those targets. To give you a little insight into how I worked, my area, if you don't know Britain, but anybody who lives here will, but to give you an idea, my area was from a place called Wolverhampton, which is in the Midlands of Britain, which is right in the middle, all the way up to the border countries of Scotland, sometimes just over the border into a place called Gretna Green, which you may have heard of by people going there and getting married. But generally I ended in a place called Carlisle, which is the border town at one side of the country, the western side. And on the eastern side, a place called Berwick-upon-Tweed, which interestingly enough has a bridge going over the river. And at one side of the bridge it's England, and the other side of the bridge it's Scotland, even though that's been under some form of debate for a long time. And coast to coast. So the Midlands of England to the boundaries of Scotland, west coast to east coast. So that was my area. I would be out of the house at, if I was in travelable distance to where I was working, so I worked at, if I travelled 2 hours, I would try to get to where I was going, work, and come home that particular day. Any more than 2 hours, it became a little bit different, so I would actually stay away for a week and come back, go on the Monday morning and come back on the Friday night. But I would work from about 7 in the morning till about 9:30, 9:45 at night, getting back to home after 11 p.m. And then eating and so on and so forth. Now, you had to work those hours because of the pressure of the targets. Now, that I believe is a similar thing with a lot of these telemarketing type fundraisers and a lot of these on the street fundraisers. The charities will probably not admit this, but I feel that must be the case because of the amount of pressure that they are exerting on people like you and me, the good-hearted and moralistic people in society who believe that there should not be any injustice on this planet, if indeed this planet was fair. But we all know that this planet is not fair. It's far from fair. But also, as I get older and look at the world from a more detached point, I do believe that a lot of countries who have the problems because they do not change. Let's say they do not encompass technology, they do not try to develop. The civilizations they have now are the same civilizations they had 200, 300, 400, 500 years ago. They've not developed like us in the Western world, so therefore they will still have drainage problems, water supply problems, disease problems caused by inbreeding and so on and so forth. So the pressures on fundraisers are becoming more and more to deal with problems that are not only being caused by the inherent problems of poverty, as it were, but the inherent problems of the diversification of different countries in the world not developing. And it seems to me that a lot of organisations are going in there to try to solve the problems, but these problems are just ongoing regardless of the effort. For instance, when I was a little boy, I used to see pictures on the news of a country called Biafra in the African continent, who were suffering great hardship, starvation, children with distended stomachs and things like that because they hadn't eaten. Now, that was 50 years ago. We are still seeing those pictures now. So the question has to be asked, well, one, why? My question there would be, if your children are starving, if as parents you can't feed yourselves, why would you have children? You're just bringing them into a situation which is an impossible situation to manage. And two, why, as potential donors, should we give money to the ongoing organisations who don't seem to be achieving too much? But am I just being cynical there? You bear in mind, I have been one of the people who generate money for causes. But again, as I get older, my belief is that charity begins at home. And that doesn't matter whether it's here in Britain, or whether it's in the USA, or whether it's in Australia. If you have an inherent problem where your own people are suffering, then the charities should be pushing to resolve the issues in your own country first, and then they can help the outside sources. So I kind of hope this is where I can tie this up now, where I seem to have covered a lot of bases here, and I kind of hope that this has answered your question, Mulberry Bush film, 1967 film fan. It's a difficult one because you've got your own personal dilemmas built into this, and your own beliefs, and your own charity system in your head that we all have, and your own conscience, and your own world view, and that kind of thing. If you're one of these people who say, I'm out just for me, that there's only me that counts, then all this is going to be kind of nonsense to you anyway. But that's kind of where I'm coming from. I kind of hope this answers your question. I would think that this is going to generate quite a lot of comment, because we're going to have people who fall on both sides of that. Maybe people will believe that the problems here in your home country, whether it be here in Britain or elsewhere, and if we're a first world country, those should be put aside, and the people in Africa and India and wherever else, Bangladesh, should be dealt with. Maybe you believe that. If so, let me know. So that's it for this one. Quite a deep one, another departure from the watches stuff. Look forward to hearing from you. As always, put your stuff down below. I will get back to everyone, because it is something I feel very passionate about. Nobody should live in poverty. Nobody should live under the fear of disease. Nobody should live with difficulties that they don't deserve. But should the solution always come from the first world, as it seems to do, when we are all aware right now the first world has its own problems? We do get floods and hurricanes in the first world, and it takes a long time. Certainly in America, for instance, it seems to take a long time to get those problems sorted, and these are your own people. We have similar things here. We have the flood in Boscastle years and years ago, which seems to take a long time to get sorted. But there you go, that's it. Let me know your thoughts and your feelings. Any questions, queries, suggestions, answers to this. If you have any answers, by all means let me know down below. Thank you very much indeed for watching. I hope the 2 requests were dealt with quite adequately today, and I look forward to speaking to you all again very soon. Thanks a lot. Bye-bye.